Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. I'm so excited today to be joined by the fantastic Melora Hardin to talk all about the mold type. And I love how much input you've had on Jacqueline as a character throughout the show, and that there's been a lot of plot points that you've pushed for, and in particular, a lot of what we're seeing her explore right now within her marriage. And so I was really curious about how that gives you a lot more layers and complexities to be able to play with a character when you have that type of autonomy where you can also bring storylines to the table for her.
Yeah, well, everybody has been very receptive to that. When I was offered the part at the very beginning on the pilot, part of the reason that I knew the show was the right next thing for me to do was that Sarah Watson was the creator, and she was just lovely and so, I think, open, and not only open, but excited by my ideas and thoughts. And I was always thinking down the line, and sort of I guess I had an intention and a thought, and that this would go for five years, 5 seasons. And I sort of felt like, I wanted her to be a well-rounded character. I felt like it was a very important position to be playing a woman on television who was a woman of power, but also a kind woman who was a woman with integrity. And I really wanted her to be a full three-dimensional character. I didn't want her to just be, shiny and perfect and not have some frayed edges. I felt that that was really important. And it's one of the things, I was told once by a friend that, we don't connect over our successes. We connect through our failures. That's how we all connect. And so you can't show a character that's just in the, unless you're doing a cartoon or you're doing some kind of a spoof, you can't really have a character that's just da, 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 like she's such a wonderful and a genuine and an incredible mentor, but she's also a woman, and she's, and so I really wanted I wanted her challenges to be explored. And that was very important to me in playing the character, and something that we did talk about very early on. And I felt they were very receptive too. So I knew we were going to be able to do some fun stuff together, and we did.
And obviously, one of the aspects of television is very frequently that you develop a lot of backstory and a lot of history for a character that isn't necessarily on the page of the scripts, but comes into play. And then there's times where, season 3, season 4, you get details that change that and pivot information. Have you found that because of the collaboration with the writers and that being a very different type of experience for you, that similarly it's shifted how many times you've had to pivot a piece of information that you constructed at the very beginning of your character development process?
Yeah, definitely. It's been very consistent. It's been very consistent, and all the development has been, we have talked about everything. Everyone's been very collaborative, and when some big turn happens, they bring it to me and sort of say, what are you thinking about this, and what do you think, and this is why. And and I just always love it. I think the writer's room has been amazing on the show, the integrity of which Sarah created these characters and where she was coming from, and then the way that the writers and the showrunners have taken that forward into these 4 seasons, past the first season. It just has really, it's been really, really wonderful. There's been a really lovely through line through the whole thing.
Yeah. And I know that when you first got the role that you did an extensive amount of research for, what would this mean for my character professionally to be running this magazine, and really looking at the landscape of the industry as a whole, and in particular, Joanna Coles, who your character is based on. But then as the show has progressed, we've seen a lot of different evolutions in terms of the media landscape, which have really been reflective of what's been happening in real time, and we've seen it with Scarlet going very heavily into the digital space in a completely different way, the way that social media has continued to evolve. So what have been some of the research points that you've continued throughout the show, or new elements that you found yourself diving into in that respect as the evolution happens with Scarlet on the show?
Well, I think that the show is really extraordinary in that we've always kind of been just a little ahead of the curve with sort of the topics that we talk about. When Jacqueline had the carry the weights thing, that was before the Me Too movement. It was literally right before the Me Too movement started. And I feel like that's happened with so many of the things that we're dealing with throughout the 5 seasons. And so I guess I'm just sort of always kind of tagging on to what the writers bring, because they do have this kind of prescient way of tapping into the pop, the not just the pop culture, but the culture, the modern, culture of what's on people's minds. I think I mentioned Kamala Harris in season 2. Just things that are just sort of right on the precipice of coming to fruition. And so I guess my research, if you want to call it that, has just sort of been inspired by what the writers are writing about. And then Joanna and I have become, she's one of my closest friends, and we've become very good friends. So we talk a lot and we share a lot about, things. And if I have questions about that world, I can always go to her, and she lived it. So she always has a good answer for me.
I feel like in the way you describe the prescient nature of the show, that we should all be looking back a few episodes to see where we're going next.
Yeah, I think so. And I think in 10 years, we're going to look back and there's going to be some interesting things like, I was just talking earlier about how the relationship, the very short-lived, but relationship between Kat and Ava, I thought was really, again, I think quite a prescient thing to put on television. And I thought kind of a revelation, because we have such a problem in this country talking to people that disagree with us. And I thought that was just a wonderful, liberal conservative, sort of connection that was fraught with challenges. But I just really liked that they tried to tackle it so that people could at least have the beginnings of a conversation about what would it look like if we actually could be in a country again where people could talk and negotiate across party lines, and where we did hold a kind of moral compass that I think the Bold Type just has, an internal moral compass that is running the show and running the characters' sense of right and wrong that, the country has lost. And I think that will be a beautiful and probably revealing thing to look back on and just sort of ponder a bit.
You touched a little bit at the beginning about, one of the aspects of Jacqueline that everybody's been so responsive to is the fact that she is a very kind boss, and she has this really wonderful demeanor with every single person that works for her, whether it's her assistant, a head of a department, or a board member. There's a lot of respect there, but there's also that mentorship style, that people always really cultivate towards. But what I was interested about in respect to that is the way in which, through your performance, you look at and create a mentorship track with each of these people underneath her in completely different ways, because the relationship and mentorship for someone like Oliver, who's been very senior for an amount of time, is very different to a character like Sutton, who started as an assistant in the show and really needed someone there to help guide her and give her that confidence to go after things for herself. And so through your performance, how have you thought so distinctly about what those individual mentorship relationships would look like for Jacqueline?
Well, I think that it's built into the characters. And when you're thinking about who you're talking to in any kind of a scene, you're going to always be bringing a different quality, and so it's really just, it's about being in the moment as my character with that other character. And there's different relationships that are there, with Oliver and Jacqueline. They've been friends for a really long time. And I think that maybe in a way, she was probably just a little more senior than him at all times. But I think that his rise was very much, more congruous with hers. And so they've gone through things together, and they've had losses together, and they've, so there's like a friendship there above and beyond the working relationship. And then just each character has a different, I think that Jacqueline sees something in Jane that reminds her of herself when she was younger. I think she sees in Kat that she has giant potential for change, and that she can instigate change, and that she has the rage that can propel change, and she has the intelligence. And I think that she sees in Sutton that she is finding herself, and she wants to help guide her, but she wants to support her, because she's sort of in a very she's in a kind of blossoming stage, and she's also, you know, married to a longtime friend of Jacqueline's, Richard. And so, you know, there's sort of like, she probably knew about Richard through Richard. She knew about Sutton much before probably they revealed it in HR. It's very possible that Jacqueline, you know, was already kind of aware of that.
And in reverse to that as well, it also always feels like Jacqueline is very open to learning from everybody around her, you know, and taking on not just information, but maybe small traits in how they approach certain things, particularly when it comes to stories and editorial coverage. And so how are you always looking at the performances and the characters around you and thinking about some of the different things that you want to then absorb into Jacqueline as a character?
Well, I think any great leader is a great learner. You know, and any great leader is, I mean, a truly great leader is someone who's just eternally curious, and they have a very strong internal compass that is rooted in something that is beyond ideas or agendas. It's a more core belief. And so Jacqueline's constantly drawing from her environment, from the environment of, you know, the social environment of the world, of the you know, of the culture, and the trends, and, you know, and learning the good, the bad, and the ugly there, you know, and I think, you know, sort of remaining true to her compass, to her internal compass. And so, I mean, I really hope that, and I'm really glad to hear you ask that question, because it means that you are seeing that she is always, she's always truing herself, you know, and I think that she's doing that by being very perceptive, very aware, very awake, but very curious and very alive in her questioning, very alive in her questioning. And I mean, that was one of the first things I noticed about Joanna Coles when I first met her, is how curious she is about other people, how many questions she asks, because she comes from journalism. So she's used to that, asking questions, but she truly, in the depth of her being, wants to know. And I think that if more of our leaders were a little more curious, we'd have a lot more peace and a lot more harmony, you know?
And one of the ways that that questioning and that curiosity comes into play is that anytime that she has to make any major decision, she always wants to hear pieces of information, exactly as you were just saying, and really learn all the different points of view, even if it's something that she knows is different to her first gut instinct, to make a really weighted decision. And as a performer, is that actually a really useful tool for you? Because then you get to, in real time in your performance, go through all the mechanisms of what's the decision she's going to make, why is she making the decision, what are all the things that she's considered, because you also then have it there in the scripts for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a nice little dance.
And in amongst all of these personality traits as well, she's also an incredibly strong woman and strong character, and you really capture that. But I really respect and appreciate the way in which you convey that through your performance of her. And was that something where very early on there were conversations about what type of strength and power she would cede, how she would exert it? Because the other thing is that when she does want to really, you know, stand up and cause a little bit of trouble in a situation, she's very cautious about using it very specifically and making sure that she doesn't overutilize it so that it has even more weight when she goes into a situation.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first conversations that was had about Jacqueline was really about how she's the anchor. I mean, she is the, you know, in the same way that I was just speaking about Jacqueline having that inner compass, I think she is the true north for all of Scarlet, you know, and she's the true north for all the storylines too. So ultimately, that's what everyone is truing to, even though they don't know that they're truing to that. She is, you know, she's the anchor. She's the, you know, she's the, while she has landed, you know, while she's sort of helping the girls take flight.
And she's also in a place where it's very clear that this has been her North Star and the place that she's been aiming to be for a long time in her life before she got there. But at the same time, there have been brief mentions of how she doesn't necessarily think that she's the future of Scarlet for forever. And she completely understands that. And are there ways in which you and the writers have started to think about little seeds and little ways in which she's starting to lay the groundwork for a time at which the magazine exists without her in the ecosystem?
Yeah, we've definitely talked about what that might look like, and what, you know, and then just with Jacqueline's struggles in season 4 of trying to balance work with personal life and relationships, how that might play out, and what, you know, she's really taking a closer look at her priorities. And I think that's also what a good leader does. I think that a great leader, a great mentor, knows when to be forward, when to be in the spotlight, and knows when to step back. And, you know, and I was just talking to a friend this morning who was telling me that, you know, that she thought I was like the wolf that leads the pack, and that the wolf that leads the pack leads from behind, goes, you know, they go out, they search, they clear everything, they check everything out, and then they go behind the pack and they push the pack forward. And I think that, you know, with social media and with the internet the way it is today, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise, and a lot of people are addicted to the noise. And I think that when you can see people but there's also a lot of people that are doing just what I just described. There's a lot of people doing that. It's just that, you know, they're not as loud.
And you also on the show finally got the opportunity to step into directing an episode recently, which was something that, again, you had voiced at the beginning was something that was very important to you. And coming from a background where your previous directing has been independent projects, and this being the first time that you were directing for a network in a studio system, how was that just a complete evolution for you as a director in thinking about the way that you worked with everybody, you know, and also even just the ecosystem of what you had around you versus earlier project where you literally had friends and family helping to cook the meals for everybody on set?
You did your research really well. I want to thank you for that, because that makes a much more interesting interview for me when people do that. So thank you. Yeah, I was really a little nervous about how am I going to feel about this. I don't quite know if I'm going to, you know, I don't know if I'm going to like answering to everything, everybody, but I got there, and it really was like, it was a toss up. Like, this is going to be the one time I direct TV and then I'm going to be done, or is it something I'm going to want to do more of? And boy, it was like a dream. It was a dream, because when you have all of that, you know, all those people that are experts in their own field, and they're all there to support you and to support your vision, and to say, oh, you know, I'm sort of seeing, you know, in my case, I did the episode called Snow Day. So there was like a storm happening outside the windows. And I'd say, you know, I just see sort of the storm and a lot of thing. And then we'll transition over here and we'll move into the other scene. And we'll transition here with you know, moving from windows to the other windows in the other location. And like within moments, there's 10 people standing around me telling me how we can do that. And I was just like, oh my God, there's nobody here telling me we can't do that. There's no one here going, no, we can't do that. So it was great. And I also I think, you know, I've been working professionally as an actor since I was 6 years old. And I think that I'm so comfortable in the land of television and just the land of sets, you know, in general, working on films and TV. And so I'm really comfortable with the pace of television. You know, a lot of people said, oh, you know, that must be hard. But I actually had to work faster when I made my feature film, you know, on a shoestring budget, because, you know, I'm good at making decisions. And that's really a lot of what really good TV directing, as far as I can tell, is really about really strong preparation and then really being able to pivot, you know, quickly in the moment, based on all of the challenges that happen every day on set.
Husband in an independent feature, or, you know, the cast on this show that you've been working with for seasons, or someone that you've just met for the first time and this is your first instance of working together, how have you really thought about stylistically who you've wanted to be as a director, particularly when it comes to the type of environment that you create and the type of communication style that you have with actors on set?
Well, I think that's been an evolution. Obviously, you know, you don't have like particularly a vision for yourself. Um, well, you do, but I think it's an ever evolving thing and a growing thing that is, you know, that is developing, always developing with each project, with each relationship. But I think that I know, again, because I've been doing this as long as I have, I know when I feel good. And I know that for me, as a child actor, as a teenage actor, as a young adult, as a young woman, I know the times and the people and the collaborators that made me feel excited and good. And, you know, just, you know, I always say it's much harder to be an asshole than it is to just be, you know, be a person that's a good person. And I really try hard to do that because I feel like everybody's valuable on a set. Everybody's equally as valuable. If you don't have good food for the cast and the crew, and you don't have good craft service, you have cranky people, and then they're not going to be able to give you the best job that they can give you. Likewise, if you have, you know, hair and makeup people that are fighting and screaming and not listening to their actors, you know, it's not going to be good set. So I was always very much trying to come from the place of collaboration. It's one of my greatest skill sets. It's one of my greatest joys in life. I really encourage people to speak up. Everyone's allowed to disagree. Everyone's allowed to have their points of view. That doesn't mean I'm not going to disagree, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to enroll you in my point of view or in my perspective. But I feel that if there is an impasse and you really need me to see it your way, then you need to work to enroll me in that. If I need you to see it my way, I need to work creatively to enroll you in my way. And I feel that that's everybody's responsibility. And so I challenge everyone and myself to step up that way.
Well, it's always so wonderful to watch your work on screen. And I want to thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. So thank you, Melora.
Thank you. Well, you're wonderful too. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you.